And then Tretch comes back and he's on the pump and he's like, put your demo in the box. I promise somebody will listen. And I was like, I don't got a demo, man. I was just doing this for fun. You slipping on your pimping. You're nice. Keep it up. So you're like, okay, Nick, Granny, gonna teach you. You gotta be careful when you walking around white folks. This is so funny and embarrassing. I remember being in school and just being like, it was like, all right, you guys. I asked my grandfather, I need a calculator. And he was like, oh, I just pick one up. Just take it just in the back. Get that calculator. This thing looked like a laptop. None of my friends knew where certain things come from.
Yeah. And
I did because my grandfather was in World War II and my grandmother, she's come from like a lineage of like house Negroes. And then 2 things happened that changed my life forever.
We appreciate all the time that you have given to us. We try to bring the most interesting, captivating stories that help you understand how a person came to chase their dreams and reach their highest potential. But we need help from you. If you can please subscribe to YouTube and follow us on your favorite podcast platform. We would really appreciate that. It would help us build our audience and our reach, and we would be able to continue to have the most incredible stories told to you so that you can understand that success and your higher self is only an inch away. We hope you're having a great day and enjoy the episode that you're watching.
500 and growing.
Podcast.
Dedicated to the underdog, cause I see you. Working on your craft, getting strong, cause I see you. Ready to set it off and on, cause I see you. Correcting all that is wrong, cause I see you. Cause I see you. Hey everybody. My name is Azteca 500 and I am the host of the 500 and Growing podcast. And today we have D-Nick. D-Nick, Dominique Stockman, is a MC that stays true to the culture, that has done amazing things, that makes comic books. Everybody check this out. You got the comic book, you got the CD, right? And so one of the things is that he does is he trailblazes hip hop in general. I mean, I remember when I was a shorty and I used to see these types of things that KRS-One was doing, but for somebody to continue that, right? It's something that is admirable. The other thing that D-Nick does is he has an incredible group of like super entertainers, you know what I'm saying? Like, and the other thing that I love is that it's child friendly. So there are no curse words, there's no vulgarity, like it's all good feeling music, and they get you into it. They got 2 B-boys, that B-boy in front, 3 now.
It was always
3. I only saw 2.
Yeah.
And we'll go over the members and like and what they do, and man, they bring a show. You know what I'm saying? You know that if you're gonna perform after the Microphone Misfits, that you're going to have to bring your A game because they're gonna get everybody hyped up. Or you know that if you're performing before them, that you need to get people hyped up because the Microphone Misfits are up next. And so it's important to talk about how you got involved in hip hop. And so the Microphone Misfits is the group that D-Nick is associated with, is part of, the leader of. And so I've known D-Nick for a while. We've run into each other in our lives several times, and I'm really excited to have him. And the audience is going to really learn in this episode, like what it's like to be an artist, what it's like to be an artist in Chicago, what it's like to to thrive as an artist, to do something different that nobody else is doing, because nobody else is doing something like this in Chicago, at least I don't know of. And the idea of like keeping hip hop in your heart, and to really like dedicate your time and effort into like making a show, making lyrics, making a product, making art, making all of these things that make up who D-Nick is. So everybody, let's give a big round of applause to D-Nick.
Yo, thank you, man. Thank you, Aztec. And I was grooving the theme song, man. My God, man. You know, don't sleep on Aztec, man.
Yeah, man. I'm getting back into it, bro. I'm getting back into it. I've been like, as a matter of fact, kind of coming to it. Today is my anniversary for my sobriety. And so today I am 8 years old.
Man, happy birthday. Happy rebirthday, brother.
Man, thank you.
Happy rebirthday.
And so it's been interesting, like trying to get back into it on this state of mind, but because I'm ultra critical of what I'm writing. Before I wasn't so critical, because what it would do is it would take off all of those like I don't know if it's like judgments or like, you know what I'm saying? Like I didn't have to worry about.
Right.
I could just flow with it. Now I'm like, I don't know. I don't like this word. I don't like how this is connecting. So I got a whole bunch. I got several things written, right? Not a whole bunch, but several things written where I'm just like, I don't know. But back to D-Nick. D-Nick.
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about you, man. Like, if you could flash us back to what it was like to be D-Nick as a little kid. What was it like to be Dominique Stockman as a young little boy, and how did you grow up? And where?
I grew up in Flint, Michigan, born and raised. I never, that's a funny question. I never knew what it was like to be Dominique Stockman. I've always been D-Nick or D-Nickel or Nickelodeon, as my grandmother so eloquently like named me. That's where the name comes from. Like Dominique Stockman always felt like a social security number to me. Cause like no one, like my family and loved ones never called me that. I was Nickel, or I was Nick or D-Nick always. And like even my mother has never called me. She'll say Dominique when she's talking about me, but she's never called me anything but Nick.
Wow. Okay.
So like, and Nickelodeon is my grandmother, was my grandmother's she passed, was my grandmother's favorite jukebox, because I was raised by my grandparents. They grew up they were born in 1922 and 1921. So there was a jukebox. It was called the Nickelodeon. That was her favorite brand of jukeboxes, and she just called me that. And then I'm growing up watching Nickelodeon, that channel. And so like it just kind of connected, and that's how that came. Like, so my name comes from my grandmother, Okay. And so I've always just been D-Nick, and then D-Nick The Microphone Misfit, and that becomes a thing.
Yeah, that's interesting that you were like, you always had somebody that was calling you something different, or just like a nickname, right?
Yeah.
And so you mentioned that you were raised by your grandparents. Like, what was that experience like? It
was fun, and it was beautiful, and it instilled a lot of compassion and context into me. Like I always, before I even knew what the word context was, I always wanted to get proper context of stuff. Because, I was blessed. Like none of my friends knew where certain things come from.
Yeah.
And I did, because my grandfather was in World War II, and my grandmother, she was, she's come from like a lineage of like house Negroes. My grandfather comes from field Negroes and, you know, and all of that. Like so I was able to see how things were and understand history, and I have appreciation for history and all of that.
And that's interesting because, you know, like when we talk about, I don't know how many people our age could say that, right? Like connect with the enslavement of people like you just did.
Yeah.
You know, because they're being raised potentially by their parents and not their grandparents. So you get the experience of like past generations that, you know, when I grew up, it was the 80s. I mean, we grew up in the 80s, right? Yeah. And so my mom was growing up during the 50s, 60s, you know what I'm saying? And or like 60s, 70s, really. Mm-hmm. And so that era was way different in context to what was happening and in the country. Like, that's crazy that. And so how did the perspective of your grandparents like differ if you know that they came from the house and they came from the field? Like, was anything different with the way that they expressed themselves or the way that they were as people?
They just had a context of all of that. Like, they didn't think themselves better than anybody. They just there was just okay. My grandmother was a housekeeper among many things. She was a wedding coordinator and wedding planner and all of this type of stuff. But her primary income was a housekeeper. My grandfather's primary income was a cement contractor and a junk dealer. Okay. You know what I'm saying? So they were that. And I remember, you know, they don't, and this is context. Well, something that people, I'm jumping around, but like some people don't understand is teenagers were not invented until 1950.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So, so prior to that,
you were either a child or you're grown. An adult.
Yeah.
So I get you.
So since I was a little boy, I would go to work with my grandmother, and she would teach me. She used to talk in third person. She was like, "Okay, Nick, Granny, gonna teach you. You gotta be careful when you walking around white folks. All right." She would work in the suburbs as a housekeeper, and it's like, listen, you're gonna help Granny do this, that, and the third, and sometimes they're gonna try to, see if Andy Schaefer got a playroom. So they're going to ask you if you want to go in the playroom. You say no, thank you, because they'll accuse you of stealing. Now, white folks work in threes. So if they ask you one time, they don't really mean it. They're just trying to be nice. So you say no, thank you. They ask you a second time, they're just trying to prove they're better than the other white folks. So you just say no, thank you. Now, if they ask you a third time, they're sensitive. They're a sensitive lot. So if you go there, you say, if they ask you a third time, you go get a toy, you go out and you check in, like, this is what I got, and you play with that somewhere out in the open. And then when you put it back, you double check, like, I'm putting this back, and then you come and like, I put it back, and all of that. And that's how I grew up.
Wow.
And then once I got 12, my grandfather's like, all right, it's time for you to come to work with me. You're going to come to work with me. And so I was shoveling sand and, like helping put, garages together and, doing cement stuff and all of that stuff and collecting antiques or junk, as we would say. I was a little kid. I used to watch reruns of Sanford and Son, and I used to think that it was based on my life. I used to think it was based on my life just because I was like, only difference was their truck was red and our truck was blue. Yeah. And I was like, man, and it was like, man, I know what it's like to be broke and still like working for yourself and my
hustling.
My grandfather, he was a funny dude. He used to tell me these horrible stories that he just thought was so funny.
Yeah. You'd be like, yeah, this dude got his head blown off, but that was funny. No, but like, what were the stories about?
Man, he was telling me about when he was a foreman when he was, because
I was thinking World War II.
No, I would ask him. He never talked to me about that, so I would have to ask him stuff about World War II, and then he would tell me certain things, which was more horrific. But he never, that's a whole nother thing. He never really openly talked about World War II. I would ask him because I would learn about stuff in school. I was like, I lived with someone who was there, but so he would answer when I asked him. The only thing he would talk to me about World War II with his finger. But a horrible story, he was telling me about when he was a foreman.
Yeah.
And he was like, so he's in charge. He's in charge. And this employee comes to him. He was like, his last name is House. And he was like, House, you let me off work early? I need to go to a Klan meeting. And...
like one of his employees.
Yeah, that's what he said. Because, he may be the boss, but I'm still, white dude. I got to go to this Klan meeting. It's important.
Man.
And he's like, you think I'm going to let you off work early so you can go plan to hang our people? And he's like, oh, House, you got it all wrong. We don't just hang. And my grandfather's laughing when he's telling me this. And I'm I'm like, oh my God. And he just thinks I guess he just was treating it like it was the funniest thing ever. And I'm just like, no. Or like, things like the ice cream truck, would come by.
Yeah.
And, and it's, but he was born in 1922. So he knows when that song that we just hear the instrumental comes out, he just knows what the words of that song is. The words of that song is, well, a nigga love a watermelon, ha 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 ha. Yes, a nigga love a watermelon, ha ha ha. That's the words of that song. The song is called Nigga Love a Watermelon.
What?
And it's so the ice cream truck is playing, and you know how kids is, it's like, ice cream. And we run in the ice cream truck. Yeah. And he would just laugh because he's like, because, we in a black neighborhood and we just run into the ice cream truck, and I can only imagine what it looks like to him. It's like, man, they are playing the song, Nigga Love a Watermelon, and these young black kids is running to the truck.
Yeah.
And he just would laugh about it.
Yeah.
And he would argue with me, not just mess with you. He was like, that song is Nigga Love a Watermelon. That's not what that is. He was like, that's Nigga Love a Watermelon. And I just wouldn't believe it until I got older and like, oh snap, that is what that song is.
Yeah.
That's why, I think modern time they change the, where it's like, but you remember that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to remember that forever now, man. Like, I'm going to research it and be like, man, y'all need to stop playing that. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's wild.
But I'm the only one that knows it because I'm the only one with grandparents that.
Yeah. And so what was it like to be young and like knowledgeable on that? Like, so I grew up with older people as well, but not as old, right? Like my father and my mother got divorced. Mm-hmm. I was adopted.
Yeah.
And so I was an only child, obviously, right? Because adopting two kids is crazy. So I was adopted. Then the other thing is that we're always around adults because we're only children.
Right.
And so there was a sense of like growing up and like being more grown than I was, and being able to function around adults. You know what I'm saying? Like some kids don't know how to do that. They know how to be around kids, and then when they're around adults, like always having conversations with my mother and stuff like that. Like, what was it like for you as a young person to like go through life on another level, right? Like knowing all these things that kids don't know.
What my grandfather used to say, man, Nick, you like that little light skinned boy off Good Time. I was that. I was the kid that was really like militant, really young,
Yeah.
And like really young. And I was an introvert. You know, I'm 8 years older than my little brother.
Yeah,
so
what's your family structure like?
I have my brother, Duran, my little brother. I'm 8 years older than him. And so, you know, and then my grandparents were like super compassionate people, because my grandmother was a teenage mom, and that's in the 30s.
Yeah.
My grandfather was a teenage divorcee, also in the 30s.
Mm-hmm.
So they were both, by society standards, considered damaged goods.
Yes.
You know, and so they...
And religious, too. I don't know
They were very religious. So, you know, all of that, like, played into them, like, loving each other, being compassionate towards each other, and, you know, and being just so understanding of people. And so me and my mother always joke, like, my house is like a flop house. Like, everybody lived with Granny and Pa, you know, or their Aunt Stella and Uncle Buddy. Is a lot of my grandfather had 60. My grandmother and grandfather had 65 nieces and nephews, 14 grandkids, 15 great grands, and everybody all at some point, except for, you know, my daughter. You know, she's unfortunately doesn't get to meet them, but she got some angels with them. Sure. But we all live. I just never left. I always lived with them. I never left. But so there was people that was always living with us, because they were just compassionate people, and that like instilled in me and just understanding. I was just always comfortable being like the weirdo, like, and I was just groomed to be comfortable with being like different from everybody. You know, like I said, my grandfather was a junk dealer. I remember being in school. This is so funny and embarrassing. I remember being in school and just being like, it was like, all right, you guys. I asked my grandfather, I need a calculator. And he was like, oh, I just pick one up. Just take it, just in the back. Get that calculator. This thing looked like a laptop. It was the first calculators ever. So I'm in school, and they was like, can you everybody pull out your calculators? And I raised my hand, and they're like, yes, Dominique. Can I move seats? Because I need to be closer to the outlet. And it's just like, what? I gotta plug my calculator in. It's just like, what? And so I pull out this big old thing, and all the kids was like, what is that? And all this. But it worked. It was a calculator, and you just had it was the first calculators, you know, because they used to sell antiques. And
wow, that's dope, man.
So everything was always, nothing about me was ever conventional. Hence, D-Nick The Microphone Misfit and the Microphone Misfits crew. And everything about me and my brothers we've never like fit in any way, shape, or form. You know, I won't tell their personal stories. I know them, but like, you know, they've been through it, you know, like not nothing always horrendous, but just different ways of life. Like,
yeah, for sure.
You know,
I mean, that's what gravitated you to each other, probably.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah. We just understood each other, and, you know, and, you know, shout out to Brave Monk. Like, half of the Microphone Misfits come from Awesome Style Connection. You know what I'm saying? And and so it was just a beautiful thing. Like, you know, Jet, DFEX, you know, and Ken Solo, and Ray Light and Mel L and DJ. And I've known Mel since I was 14. Like, he grew up in Flint too.
What was it like being around Flint, Michigan in the 80s?
The recession was starting.
Yeah.
Like, it was the beginning of the recession.
And it really hit the automobile.
Well, Flint is the vehicle city.
Yeah.
We're the prototype for Detroit. Detroit is Motor City.
I get you.
We're the vehicle city. Like, when you go to Flint, there's arches that say "Welcome to Vehicle City."
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't know that we always say we're like the big brother to Detroit, but the big brother got taller than us. It's
well, like your cousin, right?
Yeah, right. Is that type of thing. Like they're the, you know, so to make sure that there could be a motor city is like test this out first. And so Flint was, you know, it's vehicle city. It was the automotive industry. So around that time for us, that was when things were changing. I only remember it being like different. It wasn't like that like prior to, but by the time I was cognizant and conscious of anything, like, yeah, we were at the beginnings or just in the thick of a recession, and people still kind of had hope in the 80s, but by the 90s, that hope was gone, and you know, and so.
So did you live around a lot of African American or black brothers?
Yeah,
Were there white people? Were there Mexicans? Like, what was the makeup up like when you were growing up?
When I was growing up, Flint was 60, and up until the big water crisis, Flint, and probably still is, Flint was 63% black.
Okay.
You know, and there were, I didn't know what a Mexican was.
Yeah.
Or a Latino. Like, you know, like, I'm like, what? You know, I remember I had a friend I grew up with named Andrew Torres, and like I thought he was just a white dude that was different, you know. And like
you were like, hold up, you're not white?
Yeah, and he would explain that to me, and I was like, okay, because nobody lived around each other. You know, they mostly lived on the east side of Flint, and I was on the south side, and you know, black people were mostly north and south, and I was on the south side of Flint, and my cousins were all on the north side of Flint, and and then you know this, there'd be a lot of white folks that be fronting like they Latino, and they'll be painting, they try to do all of the Latino isms, and try to, you know, like, I'm gonna do I'll line my lips so I can look like a chica and all of this stuff. It's like, you know, so there was those, so we didn't really know, but then, you know, I grew to them. Now there's definitely a lot more Latinos that are visible, like in Flint. And I remember like there was an interesting thing, like in the gang situation, like the gangs in my neighborhood in Flint was called the Valley. And if they would be beefing with like anybody else, they always had this weird allegiance from Valley, I guess they were GDs, Valley GDs from with like the Latinos on the east side, and the what do they call them? Mickey Cobras, that's what they were. The Mickey Cobras. And so that was the only time when there was like gang fights and all of that stuff. But they would be clicked up with the GDs in Flint, you know, on the south side. Because my neighborhood was wild, because we were the south side is predominantly vice lord, but my neighborhood was the one GD neighborhood surrounded by vice lords.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it was interesting. And by the time like I was able to move around, like I grew up with all of those people, so it dropped from being a gang thing and more became a neighborhood thing.
Yeah. You know? Yeah, and the crazy part is that like all of these gangs that you're mentioning are like Chicago gangs. Yeah.
You know, but that grows throughout the Midwest. You know, like there's some Chicago gangs that are very specific, that like, you know, Flint is Flintstone. So I'm a Flintstone. So when I moved to Chicago and people are like, where you from? I'm from Stone City. I didn't know about Peace Stone Rangers. And the Black Peace Stone. So like I gotta, you know, I remember being in a in a battle, and I was like, I said something about, Stone City representative, and they accused me of gangbanging. I was like, what are you talking about? I wasn't gangbanging, but I was like, oh, I get it.
When you were growing up, I mean, you mentioned a couple of things, right? As a young person, like any time that you were just like, and this ain't right. Whether it be family, whether it be like society, school.
Always.
What were some of the things that you wanted to change?
My like systematic things, like I just like I'm the child of a housekeeper, so I would see things like my first time getting called again, like was in like, what was that, like Fenton, Lake Fenton, like a suburb and all of this type of stuff, or like stuff like that. And I'm just like, oh, these people live different. Or I remember something that really impacted me. And he was, really impacted me. Like, there was, I saw, and I thought I was being mannerable. Mm-hmm. And I was a little boy, and I see, the person who's, my grandmother works for, and I'm like, and, something led me to call and say, hello, Mr. Schaefer. And he was kind of offended. And he takes me, he's like, Dominique, come with me. And he took me into his study. I'm like, dang, the crib got a study? We ain't even got 2 bathrooms. You know what I'm saying? So I go to his study, and he shows me his degrees. And he's like, this is 4 years of college. This is,
He wanted you to call him doctor.
Yeah, all of that to call him doctor.
Wow.
And then, but now my grandmother cooks for the family. She's older than him.
Yeah.
She's older than his kids and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And so she's serving food, and like Andy Schaefer and and his brother and his friends are like, man, Stella, this is great. Stella, you're the best cook. Oh, we love you, Stella. And I'm like, y'all calling my grandmother Stella? I ain't never heard nobody but my grandfather call her Stella.
Yeah.
Even her church friends call her Sister House. And this dude just gave me a whole long-winded thing, showed me his degrees and his fancy study. And I was a little kid, not like inflamed me. Because I'm like, you ain't finna tell these your grandkids not to call, my grandmother Stella?
Yeah.
Okay, I get it. And so things like that was planting seeds and how it was. Yeah.
Young people be calling their parents by their first name, which is wild because my children do that sometimes. They'll be like, yeah, Jesus. And I got to ease up and be like, man, like we're living in a different time. And I want them to have self-efficacy. I want them to have confidence. I know that there were times when when my grandparents were talking, or just elders, and then I would start talking in that conversation. They would be like, yo, they'd both be looking at me like I was an alien. And they would be like, you really need to stop talking, man. Like 2 grown folks are talking right now. And so there's that fine balance, right?
Yeah. I mean,
but the fact that they were disrespecting your grandmother by not respecting her authority, and then
adult.
And then claiming this respect because of a paper that you earned.
But that's where context comes into play.
Yeah.
They're not, as an adult now, I learned like, okay, you're functioning in I can't even say capitalist, you're functioning in a corporatocracy type of like thing.
Yeah.
And so under that, you're right. she's a housekeeper. She's unskilled labor.
Yeah.
So as long as they don't disrespect her, that's what it is. Under that moral, like,
Compass.
yeah. And like, I'm thinking from, you know, cultural, how I was raised and taught, and how I've seen adults like sister house, elder house, or brother house, you know, they're always, it's that, you know. And
I imagine when you heard that and you were a little kid looking up and hearing people call your grandparents that, like,
not just anybody my age, people my age.
Yeah. I mean, but there was a pride that came with that, right? Like, wow, these people really respect my grandparents, right? And you would respect other people's grandparents as well, but there was that mutual respect. And then you go into this house and this person is talking to, you know, to your grandmother by their first name, but claiming that you should call them doctor. You know what I'm saying?
And it goes back to it's context. They're functioning as in corporatocracy, capitalist corporatocracy standards.
Yeah, like hierarchy.
Yeah, and it's like, okay. And even for me, like, I had to learn to call my mother. I always joke, she hates when I say this, you know, because it's funny. Like, my uncle's mistress is who taught me to call my mother.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got to say the story, though. Yeah.
I didn't know she was we just used to call her Aunt Louise. You know, I didn't know she was his mistress. She's dead now. God bless the dead. But I would say mom, and I would sometimes say Sharon. And no one ever corrected me, and I get where I got that from. You know, because when people talk to youngsters and the youth,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you'll say, oh, your mom, they will say it to you like that. And so, but this is my grandparents' daughter, so they're not accustomed, like, well, mama is there. Like, my grandfather would always call my grandmother mama, you know. And sometimes he would call her a bunch of things, Stella or mom or granny.
Mm-hmm.
He would always go talk to granny, won't you? You know, he would just say her those titles, but they're so ingrained to call my mother Sharon because that's their kid.
Yeah.
And so when she's around, I'm calling her that too.
Yeah, because it's what they're calling her.
Yeah, and then, you know, when Aunt Louise was like, she had a smoker rasping, Dominique, you don't call your mama Sharon. You call your mama mama. You call her mama. You understand?
Yeah.
And I look at my grandparents and my mom. I'm like, y'all not finna check this? Oh, I guess she's right. If y'all not gonna check this, then that means she's right. And I was just like, okay. And that's
when it all changed. But
yeah.
Interesting that they didn't check you. Like, no, I'm not at that moment, but I'm just saying before then.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know.
They didn't tell you to until this happened. And then when this happened, it was just like, I'm not gonna correct her because what she's saying is legitimate. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's interesting that they give you that liberty to be able to say, you know, to call your mom by your first name until that moment when it was kind of brought up, you know?
Yeah.
How did your parents leave your grandparents in custody of you? I know, because we talked about this off camera, right?
Yeah.
We talked about this.
My father, they were married. My mother and father was married and living in, but he's in the Navy.
Yeah.
He was in the Navy. He was in the service, and he's he became a custody, like a user, like an addict.
Yes.
And so that was difficult for them, you know, and they're trying to. My mom is you know, not an addict and all of this type of stuff. So she loves, still to this day, love my father. Like, they're best friends. So they're trying to work on their marriage, but, you know, he's a user. And so this is difficult.
Yeah,
so
I can imagine that there was a lot of turmoil.
And then they're in California now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so they moved, like, to California, and so they send me to my grandparents temporarily. You know, the plan was for me to be there while they work on
themselves.
Themselves and their marriage. And one, they were hurt that I was gone, because I was born in Flint, and then, you know, service and all of this stuff. So he's like out in San Diego, and so they are out in California, and it's just rough on them to send me back, and, you know, while they work on the stuff, and it doesn't work out. And so she comes back. At this point, I'm 2, and my mom is in this dilemma. Do I take my kid to, you know, I give me an apartment, and I'm at home for a minute, and then I get me an apartment. Do I take my kid away from these people who have cared for him, and they don't want to lose, like, because I gave them a second leash on life, as well as from her perspective is like, man, this is a mother and father, you know. Like,
yeah, it's stable.
Yeah.
And you're giving them a reason to live.
Yeah.
Like, young people, I mean, children, man. I mean,
yeah,
you know that children make you young.
So she had the hard choice. You know, I love her forever. I always love her, and, you know, I give her respect. I don't say raised by my grandparents is a slight to her at all.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, it was it just was what it was. But she made the difficult choice for me to have a better life and have these crazy experiences. And I never really questioned it until I got older. And even when I got older, I didn't question it. I just kind of was like, okay, well, this was done for a reason. So, you know, and that's why I have this crazy fear of being homeless. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm like, man, I don't live with my mom for a reason. If anything happens to Granny and Grandpa, what's going to happen to me and all of this type of stuff.
Yeah.
And then even with my brother, like, they didn't want, you know, she was way more stable when my brother came along, but they didn't want us to grow up apart from each other. So
yeah, he
was over her place a lot more than, like, I was, but I was always with, you know, Chicken Man, as we call him. You
Chicken Man?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's my dude, man. That dude is my dude.
Is there anything that you saw growing up that you wanted to change in your adulthood?
Nah, yeah, I appreciate everything. I appreciate the journey. Like, you know, I didn't meet my father till I was 17, and so I'm glad that, like, I wouldn't have the context of the world that I have now, you know, and, you know, ain't no telling, like, if he would still be here if, he came back, you know. He's like 26 years old, and rebirth he is.
Yeah, you were telling me that he's been in recovery for 26 years, and that he's also a counselor. Yeah,
he's a therapist and all of this stuff. Yeah. I'm proud of the dude. I don't know, he might have been like a functioning addict.
Yeah, and you would have caught that, right? Like, you would have caught that, maybe followed in his footsteps. Yeah, it's like all up in the air.
Yeah, like, who knows? So the way where we're at now, like, yeah. I try not to have those regrets.
What made you start rhyming? Or how did you start practicing hip hop or the elements?
Man, like connecting with my blackness. In pop culture, hip hop was the only honest thing that I felt like showcase blackness in that medium. Because if you look at Jive Records, like arguably one of the best, most slept on labels that there was ever in pop medium. You have Boogie Down Productions and Karis One. You have Tribe Called Quest. You have Kool Moe D. You have Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. And you got Too Short and who else? Like, you know, in that era. I'll just stick to that era. Mm-hmm. So Tribe Called Quest, Boogie Down Productions, Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, and Too Short.
Yeah.
That's the community.
Yeah. They're all different perspectives.
That's the community. There's, you know, like what people would call like happy rap or bubblegum stuff, you know, and Will had a tight tinge of edge. Like if you really listen to the words of Girls Ain't Nothing But Trouble, he's, you know, or Parents Just Don't Understand. He was rapping about it. Come to find out the girl was a 12-year-old runaway. I was arrested. The car was impounded. There was no way for me to avoid being grounded. That was, you know, and then there's Too Short, and it's like Invasion of the Flat Booty, and you know what I'm saying, and all of this type of stuff. And then Boogie Down Productions, and, you know, You Must Learn, and then Tribe, freaking Tribe. Like all of them are all label mates. Man. And so that was like, oh man, not to mention Kool Moe D, and all of that was, I'm like, man, that's a great picture of what we are. Man. We're all of those things. We are all like clean. We are all equally dirty. We're all political. We are all like fun and older and you know.
Yeah, like, we have these different facets of our life that make us who we are. And you could tap into Too Short. You could tap into a Tribe Called Quest when you're feeling like Tribe Called Quest, when you're feeling like Too Short, when you're feeling like Boogie Down.
And Will and Jeff and all. Yeah, man. So like so hip hop was the thing for me. Like I liked NWA. I love Public Enemy, and I love, you know, Kid and Play, and, you know, and I like all of it together.
Yeah, and so you were listening to it, right? And as you were listening to it, you were like, wait, I could do that. Or what happened?
Okay, Chicago. So I'm a Chicago artist. Mm-hmm. I was always, my first.
Well, when did you, so you're moving to Chicago, right?
2003.
Yeah, why did you move to Chicago?
School.
Oh, yeah, DePaul, right?
Yeah. Well, okay. Initially, Barra. I got offered a scholarship to Barra, and then Barra got bought by DePaul, so I became a DePaul student by default.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Which is cool. It's more prestigious, I guess. And so I always had it, my scholarship was in theater. So I was always performing.
Okay.
Like I was always performing, doing theater and all of this type of stuff, understood blocking and stage direction and stage presence. So people...
Ooh, those are all like keys to being a dope MC, man. So you saw like the Matrix.
Yeah, and I was just a fan of hip hop and a nerd for hip hop and all of this stuff.
Especially KRS-One.
So when I started rhyming, I was a late bloomer at starting rhyming, but...
How old were you?
I always rhymed to myself. I used to write rhymes, but I would never do that in front of people. Because everybody was like, especially like in the 90s and all this, everybody was gangster, and, you know, and it just came with something. Yeah. And so it wasn't until I came here, like where I just did it, and I was just really, really nice. I think I freestyled one time with my friends. I was like, man, you are really nice. And I just didn't even take it in. And so I'll never forget it. I was at Barra. I was in the parking lot, and my first DJ, shout out to Pete Proper, you know, and my brother, DRU, still my Misfit family, original Microphone Misfit. At this point, Mel L is in Iraq. He hadn't got back because he's a Marine. He wasn't back, so I'm gone, and I go off to college, and we were freestyling in the parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like, cause Drew is from Long Island, New York, and so he's like, you know how New Yorkers is. They like try to show off and all this.
Yeah, they're like, yo, we're the originators.
Yeah, whatever. It's North Carolina's the originators, but that's a whole nother story. But so he's in the cipher, and then it just got him in. I started rhyming, and we're all rhyming, and Drew's the one that like kind of named us, and he's like, man, you know, I think it was like Diddy called, and then he said Puffy because he was Puffy at the time. Puffy called those dudes on making the band the delinquents. If they the delinquents, then we the misfits and all of this type of stuff. And then it just stuck. And people on campus were calling me that and all of this stuff because we would just rhyme, and like I was publicly comfortable to rhyme.
Yeah.
And then 2 things happened that changed my life forever. The Source came to the Barrett campus of DePaul.
Okay.
When the Source was a thing, and they were having the campus combat battle, and this is all of these people from, you know, all over Chicago and I have friends who were rappers, and I was like, yo, my mom is coming to visit me in school. Give her your demo. I'm going to enter this battle, and I'm going to try to pass it off to some people.
Mm-hmm.
You know, friends never did. They never gave the demo to my mother. So now I'm in this battle. And the people that were performing was Alchemist, Black Moon,
ooh,
and an unknown person who a couple months later would be known as Akon.
Okay.
So, and I'm in this battle, and I come in third.
Nice.
And they felt like I was robbed. The school felt like I was robbed.
Yeah.
Because I'm not from Chicago proper, and the stupid people in the Source didn't understand this is the campus combat battle. So there's a chance that people that's representing this city might not be from this city.
I get you.
So, but I'm beating everybody.
Yeah.
Like I was beating everybody. And so they had me battle 20 people at one time because they was like, we got to get him out of here. We need a pure Chicago person.
Yeah.
But
yeah, like you're spoiling the show.
Yeah. And then, but I'm not, but this is my campus. So I have I don't have the Chicago hometown advantage, but I have the
campus advantage.
You
so
know,
everybody knows you on campus.
Yeah.
And they're like, yo, that's my man. Yo, like, what you talking about, yo?
And so it's like, why are you at? So then there's this legend. D-Nick beat 20 people at one time. I only won one round against the 20 dudes.
Yeah.
But I did win one round.
Hey, you could chalk that up.
Yeah.
It's a W.
And then so anytime the battles were going on, they were just chanting my name.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm at this
time.
Well,
you became the underdog, right?
Yeah. And so they brought me back. They just brought me back to battle because it's like, we got to get the people. He got to get an honorable L. You know, because these people will not stop chanting him. He's got to get an honorable L.
Yeah.
So they brought me back to like as a bonus, and then I lost in the third. It was the last 3 of us, and I lost. And the crowd was cool.
Yeah, the promoters are probably like, phew.
Right. But in the DePaul paper, they wrote about like he lost, but he was a real winner because they were just the person who was writing about it was just writing about how I was robbed and how
that's love though, man. Because they're showing you love, even though
Yeah. So That was the thing. I was like, man, that was dope. And then 2 weeks later, Naughty by Nature is performing at DePaul. And, you know, I guess I don't know if he has asthma or what, but Tretch he was on a pump, on the oxygen pump. So they would do a song and he would go backstage. And Vinny's got like covering. Vinny was really working, you know, hyping the crowd. Tretch was just in, and we don't know why. It's just, you know, but it was smooth. And so Vinny like grabbed two people out of he was like, let's get a battle. And so he peeled two people out the crowd. And my brother Pete Proper, original Microphone Misfit, from that barbecue, was my first DJ. He grabbed my hand. He's strong, tall, German dude, and he grabbed my hand like, this dude. So he pulled me and this one kid up.
So he believed in you so much that he raised your hand for you.
Yes.
Okay.
And I battled this kid. I won. And they just let me rap for like 15 minutes, you know, until Vinny, like I have a picture of me getting the microphone from Vinny. And then they just had me backstage. And that's how I knew, oh, Tretch is on the pump.
Yeah.
You know, and he would just, you know, so they do the show and I get to watch the rest of the show from backstage.
Yeah.
So I'm like, and then Tretch comes back and he's like, he's on the pump and he's like, put your demo in the box. I promise somebody will listen. And I was like, I don't got a demo, man. I was just doing this for fun. You slipping on your pimping. You're nice. Keep it up.
Damn, that's pretty dope, dude.
And I was like,
especially Tretch. Tretch is treacherous. You know what I'm saying? Like that brother Eminem.
And so there was one way out for them to go. So it was like he took a couple more pumps and then him and the crew like darted out and the crowd like chased after him. And then I come back from backstage because everybody's like gone because they're chasing after Naughty by Nature.
Yeah.
But there's only my people like Pete and Drew, and they didn't chase after. They was like, yo, you got the rapper Naughty by Nature? That was crazy.
That's cool.
And I was like, this is a calling from Jah.
Yeah.
And I called the only person I knew that knew anything about music and bars and song structure. I called Mel L. And I probably sounded super frantic. I was like, man, we gotta record. A professional rapper. Trish said I was nice. I gotta do this. You know, this just doesn't happen to people from Flint. We gotta do this and all of this. And you know, I've been in Chicago since 2003. So this is home, and it birthed my music career. So I represent Chicago by way of Flint, Michigan. This is like, it's giving me that. I love this city.
What made you, you know, really invest in yourself on that level?
What? As far as the music and the comic book, or just
both? I mean, yeah. So the music, so it had to have been like, yo, I'm really doing this music thing. I got to get a producer, or I got to get beats, or I got to make beats, right? So there's that part. I got to make sure I mix, I master this, right? And then there's we're going to do a comic book. And like I said, the only time that I've ever seen something like this packaged was a KRS-One one that I got in the 90s where it had a tape.
Yeah.
Instead of a CD, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And there was a tape, and it looked just like this. It was a package just like this with KRS-One, and there was a tape in there. And
it was a comic book?
It was a comic book. Man, I wish I still had it. Yeah, but yeah, it was a comic book, and I was like, yo, why has nobody ever tried to do this? And it's just like, I've always seen you aligned with like those the shows. What are they called? The big conventions.
Yeah.
What are they called?
Comic-Cons.
Yeah, like Comic-Cons and stuff like that. What made you really put forth the effort to like really make yourself and put yourself out there like that, and your group, right? Because it's not just you.
Oh man, that's oof. Geez. Okay, man, I'm trying to see if I can condense that.
Yeah.
So at the time, they were like, my brothers are always collaborating with me on this stuff. Like, honestly, like I had 2 solo records because, like, in early 2000s, and even to this day, groups have been like commercially dying out, you know, because of the difficulties and all of that. And I have 2 solo albums, D-Nick The Microphone Misfit, Brace Yourself for the Impact, and graphic novel. And the idea from the group is like, man, they're not like Mel, actually, who taught me how to count bars and all that. So it's like, man, no one's really rocking with groups. We can da-da-da-da. Let's put this together. And he had just got back from Iraq, and he was like, cool, we'll do this and do that. And then, you know, so I was, you know, we put together 2 solo records. I was blessed to be a judge at a beat battle, and this kid is freaking blown up since then. Like, Classic Studios, Chris Classic. If you look at him, like, he's on boards and panels. He has he bought, you know, Soundscape, you know, like that building and all of that studio. And I still record from my first album to this. I've always recorded at Classic Studios, you know, since he was in his dad's basement.
Okay.
You know, and like to see him like grow to have 2 locations for a studio is amazing.
That's what's
and
up.
You know, so and get awards and all of this type of stuff and record everybody. So Classic actually produced my first solo record. And even my name, D-Nick The Microphone Misfit, like that title, like the group was like, man, if you know, one, because at the time I was doing a lot of stuff with FEW, which is Brave Monk, DJ Manowax, Super Enlight, you know, Peasant Waters, you know, DJ Architect. And he was like, man, their names are super like ostentatious, and yours is very common, man, is D-Nick. But if you D-Nick The Microphone Misfit,
yeah, you had that flair.
And when it's time for the Microphone Misfits to be a thing bigger, you won't have to rebrand yourself. So D-Nick The Microphone Misfit, you know, it just forces me to be in the front, which that wasn't really my call. That was just what my brothers, the position they wanted me to be in.
Yeah. So
for all of us, it was like, man, you're the best one to be in the forefront. And then and I study, I'm a big nerd, so I learn what like drives groups apart, what, you know, puts groups together, what's da-da-da-da. And so it's like, you know what? I'll be a executive producer and just get help whenever I can from them, and, you know, and not put that expectation on them, just be talent. And as far as, you know, I got spoiled too from performing with FEW. I'm like, man, because we were a collective, and I was like, man, no one's doing music for the B-boys.
Yeah.
And all of this type, they're the example of how you're supposed to enjoy hip hop. So yeah, and then, but how do you can't put breakin on a record, you know what I'm saying? So, but you can put them in the comic book. So their image and their likeness is this, you know, and so that puts them as connected to the product, and they get to be, they're not
seen.
Yeah, they're not background dancers. They're full members of the group.
Yeah.
You know, like, and there's not a Microphone Misfit that don't do at least 2 elements of hip hop. As far as the comic book, I'm a playwright. I went to school for theater, so I know how to write scripts, and I always love comics. And I did a show and this chick was wearing a Microphone Misfit t-shirt. And I asked her, like, I was on a bus, and I asked her, I was like, man, that shirt, what band is that? And she was like, I don't know. They're dope. You know, I threw it in the crowd, and my boyfriend got one for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you wearing, and my name is literally on the back. On the back of the shirt, it says D-Nick The Microphone Misfit, and she does not know
who you are.
And I was like, okay, we got to do something about that. And I was like, well, if you buy a book, you probably going to read a book. So, and, you know, we started doing comics, as well as, like, I was learning, like, oh, man, this comic convention goes to all these different cities. If we can, like, link and do a deal with them, you know, we could be traveling regularly. It will work out for us. And, you know, because that's the thing, too, like, especially as an indie artist, like, I don't know how you can make money if you're not, like, a pop artist. The only way you can make money is to be touring and merchandising. So book bags and action figures and all of this type of stuff, like, I'm like, let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do it. I believe in it, and, you know, and I believe in them, you know, more so than even myself. I'm like, man, I want people to see how great they are. Jet, DFEX, Raylights.
Yeah, who are they? Who are they? And what do they do in the group?
DFEX, you know, he's a B-boy. Behind him is Jet 9. Jet 9, but Jet 9, the Microphone Misfits, he's a B-boy. We got Mel L. He's a DJ and road manager, and this is, you know, this is our human Swiss Army knife. Then we got yours truly, D-Nick The Microphone Misfit. We got Symbol of Elevation, Ray Light. You know, he's a second MC and hype man, and, you know, just elevates us to a higher form. And, of course, we got Ken Solo. You know, he's a B-boy. Yep. These, just because I'm holding, these kids that you see, those are our students that we've been training them since they've been in third grade. Mm-hmm. And they've been hounding us to put them in a comic book. At this point, they're all like in college or about to go to college. Mm-hmm. And so we called them Alpha Squad because kids come first. So this was our sixth book, and it kind of completed the series. So we wanted to do something special. And it's an action adventure satire that takes the conspiracy theories about hip hop and the music business in general and puts it in a literal context. So whenever, you know, we just got through the so-called 50 years of hip hop, so everybody, there was all these young versus old arguments and stuff like that. So I was more like, I got one more story to tell. I can flip this, you know, because they're younger than us, and so like we can play on this old versus young thing.
Okay.
Yeah. That's
what's up, man, that you put them on there. So you told them, yo, we're gonna get the artist. They know the artist. They know Daryl Spicy. Daryl Spicy did the line art and the coloring for this. Damian Hampton just did the cover. Damian worked on our other books, you know, so that was the combination. Damian he wasn't able to do the line art for volume 5 and volume 6 because Damon got selected for the DC Comics Milestone Initiative. Nice.
So, like, we got to watch this cat elevate and grow, but he still did the cover for this, and it's a riff on the giant size X-Men when they introduced the new X-Men. So we're introducing the new generation of, you know, Microphone Misfits, you know. Actually, this kid is on WGCI. He's a DJ on WGCI.
Wow.
DJ Dolo. Shout out to Raw Mix Entertainment. I named him Raw Mix, but he eventually changed it to DJ Dolo to honor his father. He's the son of DJ Fat Cat, who passed away.
Like, how do you get your engine running when it comes to creativity?
That's a luxury I don't really have anymore. I miss that, but maybe eventually I'll be able to be like, okay, this is my time for this. I have to simultaneously always create. Like I'll have 2 notebooks and 2 laptops all the time, because I'm like, oh, there's a line here, here's a line there. I'm doing case notes and on one laptop and looking up bookings on the other laptop, and it's just, I just have to
do it in between time.
Just keep and do it simultaneously.
I get you.
Yeah,
And then you were talking about having the biggest show that you've ever had, right? Where you were just like, we were talking, and you
in
were
the
just
country,
like,
in
the country, and you were saying like, man, I don't know how these people that like dedicate their lives to this actually have a life outside of doing just this. Like, what was your perspective, or how did you come to terms, or how did you make that assumption about like what it might be like to be a really huge artist?
Man, it's a lot. It is a lot to do. Like, it's so much that goes into this. Like, it was a lot to go into this, to write the story and edit it with Spicy and approve certain panels, and it's 22 pages, man. Like, and likenesses and all of this stuff and story beats and the whole 9. Like, shout out to Damian Hampton and Daryl Spicy again, especially Daryl Spicy. We're just working it, and there's only 24 hours in a day. And then you working like 8 or 12, you know what I'm saying? And it's a lot. So I'm always curious, is like, man, what are you doing in between time? And if you're working for yourself, you're always working, because how do you make money while you're not gigging? Because even if you got 1 million streams, that ain't doing, what's that giving you, $12, $30? Like, it takes so much. Like, you get 3/5 of a penny every stream. 3/5 of a penny. That's the most offensive fraction in all of math.
Yeah.
As someone that used to be considered 3/5 of a human, like, you're gonna give me 3/5 of a penny? It's really hard not to believe that that's intentional.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that symbolism isn't lost on me. But yeah, like, that's the thing. And so it's just, so you're always working, and figuring it out. And
but you were saying that you were stunned. You were just like, yo, I had this big show, the biggest show I've ever had in the country. And like, yo, I just don't know how they do this. Like, you were talking about family. You were talking about having a child.
I was missing my baby. That was my first time on the road since my baby.
Yeah.
So I'm like, how do you do this when this little one is, this is your bonding time with this little one.
It's growing.
And then this is a what have you done for me lately type of business. So if you don't take up that slot, then, someone else is going to take that slot for you, because they got to feed the machine. And it's like, man, and then what's more valuable, like, man, should hang up, but then people grow to think like, oh, you gonna, resent your kid, or, people, like, everybody like,
or your kid is gonna resent you.
Yeah, and if you choose the art, she ain't gonna care about D-Nick the Microphone Misfit. She want her daddy.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying. And I like this over this over. I love this. I love this. I love this symbol. This is, this is my family. And she got me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's just the balance.
Different type of love.
So the balance is really, it can be overwhelming if you don't have support, and you don't know how we have a song, Fun and Games, and it's about how this isn't fun and games, and say wear and tear on your family often viewed as selfish. Nobody to blame because you the one that dealt this. Everyone admires you living your desires, but few understand the sacrifices it requires. No regrets, not the type that complain, just me being clear. It ain't all fun and games. I feel, I live my rap, so I really felt that, when we did it, so it's a thing. So I'm always like, man, how do you do it? And there's no clear way. Some people got real supportive families. Some people just bring their families with them everywhere. Some people just pay for, nannies and housekeepers to love they families. And, it's just, and there's no judgments from me. I'm just always like, man.
Yeah, it's a different lifestyle. Like, one of the best things that I've done is like really focus on my children. Especially growing up without a dad and a single mom, and my mom passed away in my 20s. So it's just like I'm able to be present, to love them, to make them feel loved.
Yeah.
And when I make them feel loved and I make them feel adequate and I heal myself, because it's like I'm talking to myself as a little kid. It's weird. That dynamic is weird. And I never expected to have that dynamic where it's just like, I'm telling one of my daughters, like, you are smart.
Yes.
You're smart.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And so it's liberating. And being in certain things, it's just like it's the best decision I've made is to scale back and to really be the best dad I can be, the best father I could be. But again, that's somebody else's choice, right? Mm-hmm. Like, somebody could be like, yo, I still want to do this. I still want to go to those meetings, or I still want to perform, or I still want to do that. And that's fine too.
Yeah.
Everything has a consequence, and
got to take the bitter with the sweet.
Yeah. The double-edged sword. Is there anything that you've ever struggled with where you were just like, doing artistry, or just in general in your life, where you were just like, man, like, this is getting hard? Or just in general in life. You could say, you talk about life too, but
yeah, I know. But the artist thing is obviously scheduling is hard. Cause if you pay out of pocket, the comic don't give you, and the music don't give you benefits. So that's why you got, like day jobs, and juggling day jobs and their interests and your own interests is difficult. And then I struggle with a lot of it, man. And I like fall back from people a lot, especially artists, man. Because sometimes, man, artists, I ain't gonna front, man, no cap. Artists will make you feel like they're the worst human beings on the planet. Because everybody's, compassionately speaking, everybody's fighting for crumbs.
Yeah.
And so when you have more crumbs, not even a lot, I don't got more crumbs than the other, like, joker with crumbs, but it might seem that I got more crumbs than the other joker with crumbs.
And then you become competition.
You become competition. And honestly, for us, you're not even really competition because we're not in a lane. And
yeah, you're in a whole different lane.
They don't.
They're not going to Comic-Con.
Right. And then it makes you resent. Like, it can, I won't say make, it can influence if you allow it to resent, like, you know, the scene or hip hop or other artists. You know, we were talking off air about non-compete clauses. If you're not getting, if a venue.
Yeah, can you explain that to the audience? What is a non-compete clause?
All right, if you're deemed important enough, see, and so again, before even that, these words are not my words. These are just the words that they give you for business. If you're deemed important enough, then they're gonna, not all, but some venues will give you a non-compete clause, which will mean you can't perform for X amount of days. Usually it's 30. I've never seen anything longer than 30 or shorter than 30. But it's like you can't perform anywhere within city limits 30 days before or 30 days after, because don't no promoter or venue wants you to be, you know, they don't want to compete with something that they're already investing their money in. They want to get all the people to come to the, you know, the job is to get butts in seats. That's what the job is if you're performing.
Yeah, so what you're saying is that if you have a show, right? If I'm the promoter and I book you to have this show right now, and then you go 2 days before and perform at some show that's a mile away, then that show's potentially competing with my show, because the people are going to go to the first show and not go to the second. So you sign this clause so that the promoter assures that you're not going to perform before to undercut their audience.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, man, I mean, and so you were talking about that. It's the first time that I've heard that, but I've also seen it with authors, right? Like they do a signing or they do an event and then they can't do the other event, but the other event is promoting that person. So it's just like it gets kind of foggy there.
And no, it's pretty cut and dry. It's just like, yeah, don't non-compete. It's right there in black and white if you choose to read it. And then, so if your comrades are asking you,
yeah, hey, that's what we were talking about. Like people,
can you do this show? And you're like, no, I got a show at the, you know, at the
venue.
Yeah, the venue. Like just, you know, X amount of days later. It's like, but that's 2 weeks from this. Still, it's within the 30-day time range. I can't do it. And then there's a level of thought like, man, I don't even got to explain. I don't have this, but some people have told me, like, you need to develop this. You don't got to explain nothing to them. You can't do the show. Like, I know I won't be able to do the show. You don't need to give them no explanation. Who are they?
Yeah.
And then if you don't, then they're going to feel away.
Yeah, they're gonna be like, yo, he ain't cool anymore. Like he's not down.
He arrogant and da. And if you do, you know, they may still feel that way because they're like, oh, you trying to high sign. You think you better than us because you getting slapped with non-compete clauses and all of this type of stuff.
Yeah.
And then some people have some people view your status differently too. Like, you might just be, like for us, like if you see a Microphone Misfit show and you'll look at a show at C2E2 or shout out to Demicon because we just signed a contract with Demicon out in Iowa, and it's like, dang, there was 300 people in Iowa to see them, but we're performing for the con people. Those people don't go to concerts. And so if you book me thinking my draw is,
yeah, like that, your audience for like the hip hop crowd is gonna be at the Comic-Con.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah. You know, and and sometimes it can be close, but then there's a problem with that because you don't know our crowd, meaning you don't know those people that go to the comic conventions and the video game. Now, we don't just do comic video game conventions
Sure.
and sci-fi conventions. So if you think that they're going to come see you with us,
Mm-hmm.
they don't know if this is going to be safe for them. So they're not, like, that happens. Like, we've done shows, and I can speak to this. We've done shows with Megaran that was, it might have been like just like 100 people, and then I would go and see Megaran in Chicago with MC Lars or Frontalot. People that nobody in hip hop knows, but they're in the nerdcore scene,
Mm-hmm.
they'll sell. They sold out the Cobra Lounge on a Tuesday, and that's like, man, look at where's all these people when we was just touring with Megaran like 3 months ago.
Yeah,
and it's like, man, but they don't know us.
Yeah,
and then as we've brought our name up, so we do a concert with Megaran, and then I think we did something with him at the when we were on tour with him. When we got to the Chicago date, that place was packed out. It was like 200 people because they were like, okay, we know them and we know him.
Yeah.
So we know it's going to be a safe environment for our, for lack of a better term, nerdy sensibilities.
Yeah.
Don't nobody, our crowd, they do not want to see us with, what's a group? It's a group that got a lot of edge to them, that are dope too, and I love them. They don't want to see us with 7 odds.
Mm.
Because 7 odds look like they're gonna rob you or something. You know what I'm saying? And man, that's too intense for these nerds.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Respectfully. And I love 7 Eyes. Those are my guys. But like, I know our fan base.
Yeah.
And it's different. So and then there's that. It's like, you want me and the group to headline this? With who's on the bill? I gotta pass. Because you're not gonna get your money's worth, and it's not gonna be da 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 da.
It can be planned though.
It can be, but
Wu-Tang and Rage Against the Machine, that was one of those concerts that was like, yo, what?
Right. But they don't have competing they don't have fans that are not of interest. Like Wu-Tang, like Rage fans love Wu-Tang.
Yeah.
So it's different. Whereas, I was in a conversation with somebody. This is when Prodigy was still living. It was like, man, I'm finna open for Prodigy.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, man, what you about to do? I'm finna open for what was the dude from Slaughterhouse? Dang, I forget the dude.
Royce the 5'9".
Not Royce. Crooked Eye. I'm finna open for Crooked Eye. Man, what y'all got coming up, Misfitz? D-Nick, what you and the Fitz got coming up? We finna open for William Schneider. William Shatner. That's what we was finna open for William Shatner. And they looking at me like, what? Our career is different.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying?
I mean, but you're gonna get a lot more ears that wouldn't get.
You're gonna get, you get a lot more and get different ears and all of this type of stuff. And so, but it's hard to convey that.
Yeah.
And then, and I'll be honest, the pay is different. Like, the pay is way more respectful than what we get with, our so-called peers, and then when you got families, it makes it hard. And then, but that bleeds into like, are you ego or you're arrogant, or we ain't even gonna like recognize them.
Yeah. I mean, one of the best advices that I've ever gotten in my life is from my sponsor. You know what I'm saying? He tells me, what other people think of you is none of your business.
Yes.
And so, man, living by that mantra is so liberating, yo, because it's just like, do you grow?
Mm-hmm.
Be you, you know what I'm saying? Like, also see the mistakes that you've made and live with them. But like, your life is your life, man.
Yeah.
And what people think of you really doesn't matter in the end, because when you're in your last days, if you're lucky enough to have your family around, who's going to be around? You know what I'm saying? The people who you love, your children, your immediate family, the people who you've touched, and those can be counted on your finger. You know what I'm saying? The other people may come, but the people who, I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like,
no, I will, not a but, it's an and, not an or, it's an and.
Yeah.
I will say that is righteous civilian like advice too, you know, but when you're an artist for commerce,
that's true. Your image matters.
You have to care about what the people.
And how do you survey that though?
That becomes another problem. So like for me, I try to categorize people. Are you a fan? Are you a supporter? Or are you a family or friend? I have no expectations on family and friends to support or buy or listen to anything of any piece of our music.
You just going to the barbecue.
Yeah. You know. And that gets tricky when it's colleagues who like are friends and see themselves as friends, and you know, and you see them as friends and they're colleagues, but then you're in a different lane and it's just like dang, you know, you're doing this and this, and then we don't get to collaborate, or you're not reaching out to pull us up.
Yeah, I get you.
You know,
like you're up there, man, and all we need is a little help to get up there, and you won't like extend your hand and like give your word for us.
And everything sounds like an excuse, but the reality is we ain't electricians. There's a clear path from being learning to be a licensed electrician to getting a job as an electrician. There is a clear path from, you know, being a welder and doing welding. There is no clear path in being a working artist and a pop artist.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, man, like, how did you get in this? I put my music inside of a comic book. Where did they ever tell you that you do that in school? And where's the music classes? Like, you want to get your records heard? Put them in comic books. You know, where did you hear, oh, you want to get your records heard? Find a social worker that is a DJ.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's no one that has Karis One's story.
Mm-hmm.
There's no one that has our story. There's no one that has Mega Ran's story.
Mm-hmm.
This Joker is, you know, man, he's the first rapper sponsored by Capcom. So he gets to sample all of the Capcom IP for free because he's sponsored by them. He's in the Guinness Book of World Records for most songs about video games.
Man.
And
damn, that's crazy that he gets to sample all that music, all the video game music.
So who, hence Mega Ran, he was...
And Street Fighter's part of that, right? Capcom? And so all the Street Fighter music,
all clear.
That's crazy.
It's all clear.
Yeah.
And, you know, and so, no, yeah, it's all, so how, like, how, who else has that story?
Yeah.
They gave him an option. We can sue you, or we can endorse you because we like your music. You're in copyright infringement, but we like your music. Who gets that option?
Yeah.
None of us have the same like pathway to get there, you know. And so like Tech Nine, I got the roadie for Tech Nine. Well, I got the roadie for Brother Jay, and he was on tour with Tech Nine. So like hearing Tech Nine's story is just like, man, a dude who is a fan who just happened to be like part of a furniture company. His family has a furniture company, and a big furniture company in Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
Just decided to endorse Tech Nine. Hence we get, you know, strange music. And so like a you know, person, an inheritance of a furniture company, get to finance your stuff. There's no clear path for this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We just gotta move. Like Albert Einstein said, life is like a bike ride. Move forward to keep balance.
Yeah. Yeah, and then what do you kind of, to close out, right?
Mm-hmm.
The last couple questions is, what kind of advice would you give to a young up and coming artist that is into comics, is into MCing, is into hip hop, or just in general, like maybe a different genre of music, right? But like likes comics, is nerdy, you know what I'm saying? Like you mentioned that your audience is nerdy, right? That's why I say that. But
yeah. I'm nerdy too.
All right.
We taking no offense. We take no offense.
But what kind of advice would you give them? If you're like, yo, I'm trying to start, like, I'm trying to do this.
Service. Always ask, what am I doing for you versus what you can do for me? Be of a service. Always. Same thing like with like counseling and all of that stuff. Just ask questions and be in service. You know, how does this benefit you to support me? You know, and not strip away ego. Just, you know, and once you figure that out, or you can sell that, then cool. How does, like, because venues don't care. A venue does not care. They care about butts and seats. That's their bottom line. So how can you, hey, I can get you 500 people in this venue. That's a service to them.
Mm-hmm.
I can, you know, bring awareness to this. Let me paint this mural. I can bring awareness to this, and that's in service to the cause or the people. I got a student that got to do some like art for the Lincoln Park Zoo, you know, and she's in service to them, you know. Like, look up Daryl Spicy. He's always in service. Damian Hampton, always in service. It's to me, for like advice, I would say, just give value, bring value. How do you serve? And can you bring value? So when you leave, value leaves. That would be my advice. I'm not gonna tell nobody how to rap or how to dance. We all making this shit up as we go anyway. You know what I'm saying?
Man, you telling me, man. Even as parents, we making it up as we go.
But reciprocation is always, and just being nice. Be respectful and nice to people. Be nice and be reciprocal and be in service. And then you'll figure it out. Like, I've always, you know, I've always done that. And if I'm in service to people, then they'll make sure that I'm straight.
Yeah, and I think that that's really important. And going back to your grandparents, right, and your grandma in particular, like being nice to people. I mean, I worked at a school in my past, and being nice to the custodian was one of the best decisions I ever made. Because there are so many professionals that would just like brush off like they weren't really there and not have conversations with them. One day, I went on a field trip. I came back. Everybody in the school was gone except the custodian. And I saw the custodian cleaning my room. And I knocked hard as hell because there was a gate on top of the window.
Yeah.
I knocked on the gate. I was I need to get in. My keys are in there. My car keys are in there. And they opened the door. Not that they weren't supposed to. You know?
Right, yeah.
But they did because of that mutual respect, right? And so when we talk about your grandmother, again, it's like something that you observed when you were young where it was just like, there was a different level of respect for different types of people.
Yes.
And an assumed respect that that person felt like they were what do you call it when you're expecting that type of thing, you know? But anyway, I think that it's interesting how it ties back. I think that respect is definitely you know, you never know when we're going to need each other, and not necessarily you need to respect people because you're going to need them in the future, but just because it's the cool thing to do to be a nice person.
Yeah. And be in service. Just be in service to people.
What do you wish to leave with your music and your legacy as an artist?
Truth. Like, you know, like spiritual truth for those that can see the value in it, you know, and just when I say truth, I mean, I feel like that's a cliche thing, but like actual truth. Like I kind of outgrown a lot of the hip hop narratives and stuff like that, you know, and just not being scared of anything, not being scared of business, you know. Like, I feel like, oh, do it for the culture. Oh, so you trying to get me to do something to be broke?
For free.
Yeah, like.
To make you money.
Just be honest. Just be honest. I just don't, again, like, I've saw the whiz behind the curtain.
Yeah.
And it's nobody with Richard Pryor smoking crack. Yeah.
Wow, that was an ill image.
Like, no, like when you look at the Wiz, if you see the Wiz, it was Richard Pryor, you know, who was the Wiz.
Yeah.
You know, he was freebasing. Yeah. You know, like, so I don't believe in none of the stuff, you know, because I don't even care like about any of that stuff. Like everybody, like this is how crazy, like, rap is. Like, they'll tell you, like, no ghostwriting. And the greatest rap song, like, had ghostwriter. Like, that we don't even credit. We don't even credit Duke Booty. But there wouldn't be the message if it wasn't for Duke Booty. Mm-hmm. Duke Booty wrote the message. Mm-hmm. Everything except for the fourth verse.
Wow.
Like a jungle sometimes makes me wonder how I keep from going. That came from Duke Booty.
Yeah.
That's his voice on the record. My brother's doing bad. Stole my mother's TV. Say she watches too much. It's just not healthy. That's Duke. Mm-hmm. Like that, you won't hear that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you won't hear that voice anywhere else.
Yeah.
On that whole Grandmaster Flash and the Furious 5 record.
Yeah.
But that's because he did the reference. He did all 4 verses. Or all 3 of the verses, and then Mel just, they took his stuff out, put it in, you know, first and third and fourth, like, you know, like Duke Booty is on it, you know, and you know, we say this stuff. It's all narrative to just feed something, and it's cool. Like, I guess y'all had to do that, but I'm kind of in reality and beyond the fantasy. I always laugh when I hear Rakim, you know, cool, because I don't get upset. I kick a hole in the speaker, pull a plug, then I jet. Man, who finna pay for that speaker, Rakim?
Man. I'd be mad if I was the tech there.
And then we wonder like how these artists get finessed. They don't get finessed out of they royalties and stuff like that. They just, how much is your overhead?
Yeah.
Like if you don't put your own money up, like you won't know how much the overhead is. I know how much the overhead is for this stuff. I know how much overhead is for touring. You got to pay for a van. Promoter may or may not get you a hotel.
Yeah.
They may or may not. They might just pay you for like the show.
And you got to front everything before you do the show.
You got to get to the show.
Yep.
Like that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. You know what I'm saying? And you know, so you gotta figure it out. And you'll make it back. But it's always in, you know, business, there's like 5 pillars, which is interesting because businesses fail within 5 years. If it's not sustainable. Startup capital, social capital, failure capital, leverage, and reputation. That's it. Startup capital, social capital, failure capital, leverage, and reputation. And then if you don't have all 5 of those, then you do inventory of what 2 of those or 3 of those you got to get the other one or overcompensate for the one you don't have.
Mm-hmm. How can your listeners or viewers reach out to you?
The microphonemisfitz.com. You can we're on all social media platforms, and you can find them on the microphonemisfitz.com. That's THEMICROPHONEMISFITZ. The Microphone Misfits. Who else could it be?
Nice. And thank you. Thank you, D-Nick, for coming to the 500 and Growing podcast. We really appreciate all
500 and growing. Thank you for having me. 500 and growing.
Yeah, if you want more creative content, you could go to 500andgrowing.com for more creative content. And then we are produced by Where You At Productions. Where You At Productions is great. A great resource if you have stories or if you want to tell something to your clientele, if you're a business owner, to brand yourself, to have them understand where you at and what you're doing and why you do it. Go to whereyouatproductions.com. It is a mobile production company that goes to you where you're at to be able to help you tell your story. All right. So with that, thank you, D-Nick.
Thank you, man.
You know, we appreciate all the wisdom that you've given us and your story. I'm positive that it's going to inspire many people, many of our listeners. And
I hope so.
We thank you for your time.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Peace.
Bless.
500 and growing.
Podcast.
Dedicated to the underdog, cause I see you. Working on your craft, getting strong, cause I see you. Ready to set it off and on, cause I see you. Correcting all that is wrong, cause I see you. Dedicated to your craft, read and study the math. Making goals and taking a stand. Original, so you trailblaze a path. In tune with your inner master plan.
Visit 500andgrowing.com for more creative content.
Thank you very much for listening to the 500 and Growing podcast. Remember that we have incredible guests that have already featured in episodes in the past. So please go back into the archives and listen to their inspirational stories. And then remember that we have incredible guests lined up for the future. So please follow on Instagram at 500 and Growing Podcast. Remember to follow on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or any of the major podcast platforms. You can also check out 500andgrowing.com for more creative content.
500 and growing.
Podcast.